Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this event. It's wonderful to have you here. For those of you that do not know me, my name is Rosa Solorio, and I serve as Associate Dean for International Comparative Legal Studies here at GW Law School. And I want to start by saying that this lecture is part of our Visiting Scholar Speaker Series that we created in the International Comparative Law program, to basically showcase the wonderful research being conducted by our visiting scholars at GW Law School. As you know, we have a very vibrant visiting scholar program. We have scholars from all over the world. We have some of them joining us today, and it's absolutely fantastic, to have all these scholars because they really enrich, the intellectual and scholarly life of our academic community. Before I actually introduce our wonderful scholar that's going to be discussing her work today, I want to thank Professor Leah Calabro, who organized this event, and for all of her efforts this semester to organize events. This is our 20th event this semester, so it's been quite a semester, and it has been wonderful to work with Professor Calabro in this goal, and also Selena Davis, who is here, who makes a lot possible in our program as well. And I want to thank so much also Dean Lisa Skank and also Professor Lindsay Rodman, who is here, and the National Security, Cybersecurity, and Foreign Relations Law Program for co-sponsoring and collaborating in the organization of this event. And I just also want to do a special welcome to Professor Glixman, who's here from our Environmental Law Program, and also Joanna Adashek, who's here from our Environmental Program as well. We have this amazing environmental program at GW Law School. So I want to talk a little bit about our scholar today. Her name is Aïcha Ghmouch, and she's actually a doctoral student and professor assistant at the University of Paris-Saclay in France, and her main area of research is the French presidency and environmental protection. She's looking closely while with us at GW Law School at how rising concerns for environmental issues and the increasing emergency of the ecological crisis reshape the role of the presidency in the French constitutional regime. I also must say this is a very timely discussion, as we have been holding discussions in the context of COP27 and many other global events related to the environment and climate change. And I just want to say, that she's actually a Fulbright scholar, which is an incredible honor for a scholar. It really says a lot about, the quality of her research and all of her scholarly work. And she's also investigating this comparatively. She's not only talking about the French presidency, but she's also looking at the US presidency as well. And she also conducts topics related to legal history and the history of the environmentalist movement and thought. And the title of her lecture, I think, is very iconic, actually: The Rising Presidential Influence on Environmental Policies, Historical and Comparative Aspects from US and French Experiences. And I have to say a few things about Aïcha. It's wonderful to have real scholars, rigorous scholars, scholars that are really detailed and thorough and dedicated. Her published work is really unbelievable, and it's truly an honor to have you here at the law school. Congratulations on your Fulbright scholarship. It's amazing for us to be able to host her in this period of her career. Without further ado, I give her the floor, and after she gives her presentation, we will have some space for questions and answers.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here. Before starting this presentation, I also have to make some acknowledgements. So first, I would like to thank Dean Rosa Solorio warmly and sincerely for giving me this opportunity to present and to make this research presentation here. And probably more than this, I would like to thank you for your investment, your commitment towards all the visiting scholars that are here. I had the opportunity to attend several events where you moderated the debates and the panel, and I was amazed by how you always presented the person and the scholars with a very nice, kind manner. So I appreciate that very much. una vez más, muchas gracias para darme esta oportunidad inolvidable en mi formación académica. Muchas gracias. Also, I have to thank Leah Calabro and Selena Davis for your assistance and organizing all these amazing events for the visiting scholars during the whole semester. Thank you so much. And of course, I have to thank my colleagues, Alison, Cassio, and Tom. Thank you so much for your presence. Thank you for Tom for our discussion about your pure parliamentary regime in New Zealand and made me so envious of your constitutional system. Thank you, Alison and Cassio, for, well, you are our two outstanding scholars, two amazing academics, and with whom I have, and I hope still have, the honor to share a beautiful intellectual complicity, which remind me how the university creates some miracles, sometimes gathering some people from such different horizons and countries. So thank you so much. Muito obrigada, Cássio. And beijinho de Alison. So the topic of our research today is the rising presidential influence on environmental policies, historical and competitive aspects from US and French experiences. What does that mean? It means that we are going to time travel and we are going to the 70s, guys, so get ready for the travel. So before doing that, let me present you my main area of interest. As Dean Tillori said, I'm a doctoral researcher in France. I teach constitutional law for undergraduate students. And my dissertation topic is the French Presidency, Environment Protection. This wouldn't be the final title, but this is my main area of research. I'm particularly interested in investigating how French presidents. No, it doesn't work. Here we go. It's got. Here we go. Is it working? Yeah. Okay, it's okay. So my main area of interest is investigating how French presidents, since 1958, so basically since the beginning of what we call the Fifth Republic, have been involved in matters of environmental protection. And my research led me and still leads me to give very specific attention to a main era, which is the 70s era, during which major changes occurred in the development of environmental law and political trends. So before we start, if someone of you are not very familiar with French constitutional system, let's have a look to this big picture and broad picture of the French constitutional system. So the French constitutional system is organized with the Constitution of October 4th, 1958. This is the beginning of what we call the Fifth Republic, and it has been reviewed 24 times. We are, in France, we have what we call the hybrid constitutional system. We can debate hours on the term hybrid. We're not here for that, but just keep in mind that we have like two major influences from a pure parliamentary regime, and of course an influence from a presidential regime, as you are very familiar with in the US. So what are the characteristics of a parliamentary regime? There's typos. Anyway, we have what we call National Assembly with deputies. Here we go. We can discover that we're going to make a little trip in Paris over here. We have the Senate, located in the Luxembourg Palace. We have, of course, a government responsible towards, this is the Tel Bâtiment. This is responsible towards Parliament, and we have a dual executive. So we have Prime Minister and a head of state, the President of the French Republic. So the presidential regime our president is elected by popular vote since 1962 for 5 years. Before it was 7 years, and the term is it is limited to two successive terms. So let's focus a little bit more on the powers of the French president. The French president has some general missions. I made these charts to make you have an idea of how influenceable and what kind of influence does have the French president on the powers and on the political representation. So the general missions of the president are defined in the Article 5, in the Article 5. We can't really see it very clearly, but the translation comes from the official website, from the Élysée website, which I think it's a terrible translation. But the President of the Republic shall ensure due respect for the Constitution. This is basically how the article starts. He shall ensure by his arbitration the proper functioning of the public authorities and the continuity of the states. He shall be the guarantor of the national independence, territorial integrity, and due respect for treaties, and also this is also referred in Article 52. He has different kind of influence on other forms of power and other political representation. He has an influence on the government by appointing the Prime Minister and the ministers. He presides over the Council of Ministers. This is very important. Inside the decrees and the ordinances deliberated in this council. He also appoints civil and military officers of the state. On the judicial power or authority, because we do not use the terminology of power in the French Constitution, he has the power to grant pardons in individual capacity. He guarantees the independence of justice. Yeah, this is weird. And he appoints 3 members of the Constitutional Council, and also he is a member of the CC at the end of his term. That's also very weird. Parliament, he promulgates acts of Parliament within 15 days after transmission. He can ask for reopening debate on the bill within this time limit. He can submit to referendum any government bill, and he can dissolve the National Assembly. And we have also exceptional powers for the president. And this is a very controversial article in our constitution, because basically, in case of threat on the national independency or on this institution, the French president can exercise all the powers. So he basically can be dictator if it is necessary. So, continuing this introduction, I will basically tell you and share with you what are the main interests of this research. I think the main interest, if you are here, is because it rings the bell for you. I think we all heard about the Inflation Reduction Act, so we can see that how US presidents are involved currently in environmental policies. Some of you probably heard about the France withdrawing from the Energy Charter Treaty recently, and of course we heard about the COP 27 or Sharm el-Sheikh, and that is currently happening in Egypt. So the other main interest of this research probably its historicity, and that's why it interests me the most. It interests me because when I started my research, I basically asked myself the question, since when the head of states, head of government, political leaders, makers were involved in environmental related issues? And what legal answers did they use for that? And are there any historical trends that show that it could be identified in this process? So this is the historicity of this subject, but what interested me also while preparing this research project for the Fulbright scholarship is the comparativeness or comparativity. I'm sorry for the barbarism here, but what I asked myself, what about the US experience of this écologie présidentielle, of this presidential ecology, and when and how he was president involved in environmental protection. So, and also if the US experience influenced the French one. So when I studying environmental law, we often often said that environmental has been at the forefront of international concern since the 1970s. And with that major event in Stockholm in 1972, in Sweden, the United Nations Conference on Environmental on the Environment has been organized, which was the first world conference dedicated to the environment. The Stockholm Declaration has been declared there, and the commitment from head of state to face the environmental challenges arose by development also. 20 years later, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, Eco 92, isn't it? United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, which also called Earth Summit. The Rio Declaration has been declared there with 27 principles, the beginning of the concept of sustainable development, the Agenda 21 has been taken, and also the UN Convention on Climate Change and the UN Convention on Biodiversity Protection has been taken, and this led us to many other events. So Berlin, Geneva, Kyoto, Buenos Aires, Bonn, Marrakesh, etc., etc. So we can see that since then, many gatherings of HADASET have been organized, all national delegations have been organized, and these are examples on how international commitment to tackle the consequences of the ongoing development of our societies and our growing cities. These events clearly demonstrate the response of international law to environment issues, and also the response of the head of state as leaders of foreign policies and representative of their national interests. Let's go back. Whoa. There you go. I'm sorry, I'm kind of having a little issue with the slide. Here we go. So yeah, they clearly demonstrate how much environmental concerns reshape the role of head of states as leaders of foreign policies and representative of their national interests. So now how about domestic law, especially in France and in the US? Well, we can see that on this slide that France and the United States shared sort of agenda in environmental law. So we can see that we have this period of the 60s, 70s, which is a very rich period in the emergence of a legal framework in environmental law. We have the first law concerning national park, la création des parcs nationaux in 1960. We have this first law in France related to atmospheric pollution in 1961. We have also this law related to la répartition des eaux, which is like very often called la loi sur l'eau, like the water bill, which was the major and the first legal framework to tackle water pollution. And we have this Programme de 100 mesures, which was a program that has been led by the Prime Minister of that time, Jacques Chaban-Delmas, preparing some key measures to tackle general environmental pollution. And we basically have some similar acts that have been taken in the US. Professor Brixton would confirm or unconfirm, but of course this list is not exhaustive at all. In the 70s, we have in France la création of what we call une direction, which can be translated as a bureau or a division within the Ministry of Agriculture. And this division was dedicated to protection de la nature et de l'environnement, which is nature and environmental protection. Shortly after, we have the creation of the Ministry of Nature, once again the same terminology, protection of nature and environment in 71. And a little bit after, we have this major bill on waste reducing and the major bill of protection de la nature in 76, which is basically a major bill in French environmental law, because it recognized the general interest of environmental protection, and it had implemented environmental assessment with the mechanism of l'étude d'impact, which is like an assessment to reduce and for any project you have to have an impact assessment, evaluation of the environmental impact of any project. Same thing in the US in the 70s, National Environmental Policy Act. Between 69 and 70, the Council of Environmental Quality has been created, the environmental protection, and a long list of acts that probably is not exhaustive here, that has been taken on that field of environmental protection. So here, I wanted to ask myself why this shared agenda? And I think when we ask ourselves this question, we kind of explore the limit of law answering this question. A pure legal reasoning cannot answer this question, but other sciences do. So we have to look at the humanities. And if we have a multidisciplinary, it's a hard word to say, approach, we can have like some other insights. Probably that political and constitutional law would say that, well, this shared agenda was because of a political response to the public opinion concern. It is because ecologism and environmentalism as a political project was beginning to emerge and was threatening, there was a period of threatening of political ecology. Also because presidential institution gained a new legitimacy, either by convention or practice or constitutional change. Let me check the time if we are good. Okay. Sociology can also provide us interesting insights, because this shared agenda can simply be, an example of what we call like policy diffusions. And presidents, as any other institution, are change agents of this. Sociology can also teach us because it's very teaching, because it provides us with this interesting perspective, which is that political and policy making are not a top-bottom process, but rather a bottom-up process. What I mean by that is that experts can make a field change because they are the best who knows actually the changes that are necessary for a certain field. So I would say that scientific consensus on environmental issues at that period led to this shared agenda and led to this common awareness about the necessity of, okay, we have to limit our pollutions, how do we do? And also it's kind of a policing narrative, which is very common in any field of law. Public administration theory also can provide us good insights, because and policy making is a long-term process. You don't have a creation of an administration or a law that comes ex nihilo. No, it is a long-term process, and especially in administration, it's always kind of constant reorganization and a constant reshaping of how we should tackle some problems that always existed, actually. But how about historicity? So here begins our travel to the 1970s. Here is a timeline that I would really want you to keep in mind. So if you don't understand anything to this presentation because of my French accent, please just at least remember this, all right? So this is like key milestones for I would say that, yeah, for US and French presidents influencing or involving in matters of environmental law. We have this, I identified these 8 steps, but I could probably add some more. But these are, for me, are very important and necessary to keep in mind. The first step is Richard Nixon signing statement for the National Environmental Policy Act in 1st January 1970. We have a citation, a quotation here. He said, "I have become convinced that the 1970 absolutely must be the years when America pays its debts to the past by reclaiming the purity of its air, its water, and our living environment." I have an extract that hopefully is gonna work. Hopefully, and obviously it doesn't work. Okay, never mind. Well, never mind. The other quotation is very important. The other step is the annual message to the Congress on the State of Union. So this was actually the video extra that I had, but it doesn't work. But never mind. Here we can see that Richard Nixon says. Oh, I have to go back to the slide. I'm sorry for that. I don't know why it doesn't work. Yeah, the link I think is gonna be. It's on the whole page. It's okay. It's okay. Actually, what? I'm not used to this. The thing is only gonna show the channel. It's not exactly the right thing. Hold on. Oh, thank you. Oh yeah, great. Great. Sorry. Oh, thank you so much. But I think it's. I think if I copy the title, I will find it more easily. Yep.
Perfect.
Video here. It's okay. Oh, thank you. Okay, it's okay. Beautiful. Okay. So basically, in this discourse, he said in this address. I'm sorry for this. He said that restoring nature to its natural state is a cause beyond party and beyond factions. It has become a common cause for all people of this country. Through our years of past carelessness, we incurred a debt to nature, and now that debt is being called. The next major step taken by the President Richard Nixon was in the special message to the Congress on Environmental Quality on February 10, 1970, where I would say that he's taking stock of the damages. He said that while adopting laws prohibiting injury to personal property, we have freely allowed injury to our shared surroundings. Conditioned by an expanding frontier, we came only late to a recognition of how precious, how valuable, vulnerable our resources of land, water, and air quality and air really are. They call for fundamentally new philosophies of land, air, and water use, for stricter regulation, for expanding government action, for greater citizen involvement, and for new programs to ensure that government, industry, and individuals are called on to do their share of the job and to pay their share of the cost. This is a very powerful address that I like very much. The next step is this special message to the in the same address. Here, Richard Nixon is planning the necessary step that should be taken to reach the goals that he's been describing earlier. I am today outlining a comprehensive 37-point program embracing 23 major legislative proposals and 14 new measures being taken by administrative action or executive order. I mainly focus on administrative action, I have to admit here. And I asked the President's Advisory Council on Executive Organization, headed by Mr. Wu Ash, to make an especially thorough study of the organization of federal environmental, natural resource, and oceanographic programs, and reported a recommendation to me by April 15. Oh, great. Actually, it's gonna be fine. Probably at the very end of at the very end of the presentation, if we have time. So it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's fine. So let's leave here next a little bit and focus on that. What happened on this 1970 year? This is very important for a bilateral cooperation. It is important because. Georges Pompidou, the French president, came in the United States at that period. He came from February 24, 1970 to March 3, 1970. Actually, the public opinion widely opposed his visit. There was some disagreement about the French recent involvement in Middle East matters, but this Georges Pompidou made major addresses during his stay in the United States, and these addresses shaped and still shape today, and we can read it in environmental law books in France that these addresses are the starting point of a presidential involvement in matters of environmental policy on an international scene and also in the national scene as well. What are these addresses? Well, these addresses, the first one was, and it's actually very unknown in France, this one of February 25, 1970. He focused a lot in this discourse, in this address, about the challenges that the growing society and the growing cities are going to face in the next decades. He said that there are innumerable perils stemming from technical and scientific progress and problems raised by the growth of our cities, which are immense and which easily become inhuman. I didn't find, actually, as a matter of fact, I didn't find a French version of this discourse. I only found an English version of it on newspaper archives, so just to make you notice that. And he focused on a topic that is still very, very accurate today in major addresses of head of state, when insisting on decolonization must be coupled with an active cooperation whereby the wishes bring their assistance to the least favor without encroaching on their independence. Poverty is proud, let us respect it as such, but let us help it. This sentence is very interesting. The address of San Francisco is also very famous. I mean, less famous than the discourse of Chicago that's going to come. He also focuses on what we call the progress crisis, saying that, and he also refers to the youth movement of denouncing in the United States, denouncing Vietnam War. Also, the French we had at the beginning of the 2 years after Mai 68. So it was a period that was very important in shaping ecological, political movement, and this youth movement that is starting to raise concern about how our society are growing, where are we going. And he said, what is the current youth revolt all about? If we are to believe a certain number of theorists, youth is revolting against the fate of men in our modern world. And the other discourse is more focused on environmental issues. He said, man's domination over nature is such that it carries the risk of nature's destruction itself, and it's striking to find out that despite the growing accumulation and diffusion of the so-called consumer good, it is actually the most necessary elementary goods, such as air and water, that are beginning to falter. The addresses of Chicago and the addresses of Richard Nixon, we can see that the kind of shared topics that are discussed here. So let's go back to Nixon. So after all these addresses that we mentioned, and after asking the President Advisory Council on Executive Organization, this, what we call the ASH Council, how we could reorganize the US administration on this topic, the ASH Council addressed a special memo to the President exploring the various organizational options that could meet the President's orientation. And the ASH Council advised the President that key anti-pollution programs should be merged into an environmental protection administration, a new independent agency of the executive branch. Other options were suggested, but they were excluded. And this new administrative agency has been created regarding the Section 5 of the US Code, which said that the Congress declares that it's the policy of the United States to promote the better executive of the law, the more effective management of the executive branch, and of its agencies and functions, and the expeditious administration of the public business. Through this, then, we go back to the D part. Here we go, D paragraph. The President shall, from time to time, examine the organization of all agencies and shall determine what changes in such organization are necessary to carry out any policy set forth in subsection A of this section. Whenever the President, after investigation, finds the changes in the organization of agencies are necessary to carry out any policy set forth in section 901 of this title, he shall prepare a reorganization plan specifying the reorganization he finds are necessary. Any plan may provide for transfer, abolish, consolidate, coordinate, coordinate part of an agency, authorize an officer to delegate any of his function, and abolish the whole or a part of an agency. So we can see that he's got many options to reorganize administration. thanks to his reorganization authority. And that's what he did. On the special message from the President to the Congress about reorganization plan to establish the Environmental Protection Agency and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, he said that the government environmentally related activities have grown up piecemeal over the years, and the time has come to organize them rationally and systematically. We can see, and then he addresses the message with two messages, transmitting two reorganization plans. What happened in France? Well, shortly after, so I told you about this creation in 1969, about this Direction Générale de la Protection de la Nature et de l'Environnement, which is a division within the Department of Agriculture focused on environment protection. In 1971, Georges Pompidou involved and created the first Ministry of the Environment, which is the Ministry of Nature and Environment Protection. How did he do that? Well, the option that has been chosen at the time was simply reorganizing pre-existing administration. Actually, the same thing that we did with the EPA. We just took some competences to several departments and then we merged them in one unique administration, a new administration. And also, we gave new competences to this new administration. Small budget was allocated because it was created on the middle of the year, so the budget was not really planned, so it was made very quickly. I put this image right next to the slide. It's called The Ministère de l'Impossible. It's a book, a major book that was published by Robert Poujade, which was the first Ministry of the Environment in France. And he basically, in this book, described how difficult was his mission in the 1970s because no one was aware within the administration about the utility of this new ministry. Why did we add this extra layer in the bureaucracy? And so, the procedure in France to organize a ministry is not as detailed as the US one, actually. And so basically, there's nothing in the constitution, there's nothing in the statute. We just have one decree in January 1959. It is still implemented, and it's like two sentences. It only mentions that any creation of ministry should be deliberated in the Council of Ministers. And I told you that the French president presides the Council of Ministers. So this is very small formalism in the US. So this was the first organization of the ministry. It is possibly being influenced by how the US administration has been created, because we took different competences from different departments and we just merged them in a new administration. But now, again, we should be careful saying that something had influenced another country, because policy diffusion is something that is common, and in every country there's not that many solutions to organize an administration if we want to tackle a specific problem. I'm coming at the end of this presentation, and I still have some, this is a work in progress, so a lot of various perspectives, I still have various perspectives to develop in this research. So, did the creation of the administration of the environment in the US by the president influence the French one in pursuing the same purpose? As I told you earlier, I'm very cautious with this question. I think we are going a little bit out of the legal reasoning when we ask ourselves this question, but I want to try to answer it. And I think the creation of the administration showed how the French constitutional regime is influenced by the US one. I would tend to say yes, because in the constitutional law in France we have this very common current in the doctrine, in the scholarship, saying that our executive power is getting more and more influence of how the executive power works in the United States. So it could be yes, it could be something that we imported, definitely. Can we see a US influence nowadays? I would say yes. I'm not developing this in this presentation, but we have now many other institutions and that are creating within the Council of Ministers. For example, Emmanuel Macron recently created the Conseil de Défense Écologique, which is the Council of Ecological Defense, which is a very informal institution created within the Council of Ministers. We don't know, it's absolutely not transparent. Why do I say that it's a US influence? I think it's a US influence because in many things about the CEQ, the Council of Environment Equality, within the executive branch that exists since 1970 in the US, and it is a council that is supposed to advise and give some orientation to the whole policy making and regulation in the United States. We have also this tendency to create new agencies. I think about the Haut Comité pour le Climat, the High Committee for Climate Change, which is an independent organism that is created, have been created 2 years ago. 3 years ago was in 2017. Okay, I don't remember that then. 2017. And it advises the executive branch in matters of environmental protection, but specifically in matters of climate change issues. So, work in progress, to be continued, and stay tuned. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Anderson. I hope we have some time left for any question that you might have. I'm sorry, I wasn't very good at managing the timing. But just remember one thing, but I don't know if the video is gonna work, but I have like this beautiful video. No, it doesn't work. It's okay, it's fine. Anyway, thank you so much for your attention, and oh, I think I didn't include the link.
I think you have to.
I'm not
You have to do this. Go back to where it was. You have to.
It's the president one.
Where is it? This? Yeah, so go back there.
Okay, that's interesting. I don't have it on the laptop, so it won't work. I don't have the video on the laptop, so it won't work. Anyway, yeah, thank you. So it doesn't work with the internet? Okay, never mind. Thank you so much for your attention. And I'm ready to do some of your questions. Sorry for this. Delay. Yeah, I saved my favorite part of the memo ash. I think this is beautiful. I should, the memo ash should be like in some anthology of political ecology because I think it's a beautiful piece of environmental material. I don't know. I don't have it. I don't have it only online. In a few minutes. It's not. It's okay. Okay.
First of all, thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation.
But I didn't manage all the multimedia.
Well, that's okay.
aspects of it.
We are in a moment in which media and technology sometimes collaborates with us and sometimes it doesn't collaborate with us.
It was not collaborative at all today. Oh, but
There we go.
Here we go. We have some
Hey.
miracles sometimes. There we go. We don't have to. I just wanted to show this part of, I don't know if the sound works.
Go to the lower left.
Yes, it's fine.
Good. Right, I think it's right there.
It's an honor for which I am.
Do you hear it?
The little,
The State of the Union address is traditionally an occasion for a lengthy and detailed account by the President of what he has accomplished in the past, what he wants the Congress to do in the future, and in an election year, to lay the basis for the political issues which might be decisive in the fall. Occasionally there comes a time when profound and far-reaching events command a break with tradition. This is such a time. I say this not only because 1970 marks the beginning of a new decade in which America will celebrate its 200th birthday. I say it because new knowledge and hard experience argue persuasively that both our programs and our institutions in America need to be reformed. The moment has arrived to harness the vast energies and abundance of this land to the creation of a new American experience, an experience richer and deeper and more truly a reflection of the goodness and grace of the human spirit. The 70s will be a time of new beginnings, a time of exploring both on the earth and the heavens, a time of discovery. But the time has also come for emphasis on developing better ways of managing what we have and of completing what man's genius has begun but left unfinished. Our land, this land that is ours together, is a great and a good land. It is also an unfinished land. And the challenge of perfecting it is the summons of the 70s.
And then it goes. This is a major discourse, I think. It sums up how beautiful the 1970 was, how challenging it was for presidents, and how this year is so important in the history of political ecology and the history of environmentalism, and that's why some major bills have been taken at this time. I think. So, yeah, I'm very glad at having shown you this today, at least. Yeah, thank you so much.
I think we have some time for questions. Are there any questions, Cassia?
Aisha, nowadays environment policies are associated with the liberals in the United States, with the Democratic Party, and in France they are associated with the left-wing parties like the Parti Socialiste. And we see in your presentation that in the 70s, very conservative politicians like Nixon and George Pompidou were engaged in these environment policies. How can you explain this paradox, this changing of ideology about the environment?
Yeah, how basically how a political movement do not have the monopoly of what is simply public opinion concern. I think you are better told than me to answer this question as a professor of political science, but we all know that if a political opinion, the public concern emerges, any party have to seize this opportunity to turn it on its own interest. We saw this in France recently in the last 2020 election. Every party had, I would say, une ligne écologique, une stratégie écologique, like a ecological strategy, and every party colors it and add nuances to it to make it fit in the traditional line of the party. Even l'extrême droite, the extreme right in France, had built a program focus on national sovereignty, focus on how we should, like we get this concept of national preferences, which is very focused and make us think about the stressing the local economy rather than the global one, which is more harmful to the environment. So I think every party turns this concern to its advantage and how to adapt it and try to adapt it to their traditional lines and their traditional pattern. This is my opinion, and we have many examples in France of this. And actually, in the 80s, when Mitterrand arrived in power, which was the first socialist president of France in 1981, this was the beginning of the political parties to get close to the left. They got less closer to it, and they tried to organize themselves a little bit more, following this socialist movement. But I would say, I'm not a historian, but at the same period began kind of schism, kind of distortion in the political ecology movement, political ecology wave in France, because we have these two major schools, écoles, which is basically the one that say that we should, radical ecology cannot be led following the mainstream parties. We have to build our own autonomy, and also the ones that are more focused on an involvement that is not political, an involvement that is more citizen movement, following civil society movement, rather than political movement in this. So I hope it answers your question. Yes, Professor Wilson.
So you mentioned at the beginning that France has a hybrid constitution,
Yes.
which is part presidential, part parliamentary. Because in the U.S. we don't have a hybrid system. It's a presidential system. I was wondering whether you thought that the hybrid system made it more difficult or easier to develop environmental protection legislation compared to the U.S.
Interesting. Thank you for the question. I would say no. I would say no because, as I said earlier, our parliamentary regime, I'm not familiar with this notion, is a rationalized parliamentary regime. What does that mean? La rationalisation of parliamentarism, rationalization of parliamentarism, is a concept that's been used in constitutional law to explain how, with the Constitution of the Fifth Republic, we try to enhance and strengthen the executive branch rather than the parliament. There's many mechanisms in our Constitution that can prove that, and that help to weaken the parliament compared to the executive branch. So I would say that actually we already have a very unbalanced constitutional regime that favors and that encourages the executive branch policy making rather than the parliamentary policy making. All there is I think there was a report that the Senate recently published, and most of the reforms in France are made not within a parliamentary initiatives, but within the executive branch initiative. So it's very imbalanced, and if you add to that the influence of the European Union, we can see that actually a lot of power, and so that the power of the COVID crisis has been managed in place. How powerful our executive branch is compared to the parliamentary regime. And plus, in France, and this is also something is more linked to political psychology than constitutional law, we have what we call a discipline de parti, which is like the party discipline that is different from the US one. Even though it's not as polarized as US, political parties support a lot the line of the government. And we have a very difficulties to shape non-position and to make coalition in our opposition to fight and go against the presidential and the executive agenda, basically. So I would answer no, parliamentary regime did not was not an obstacle to implement environmental law. Definitely not. I hope it answers your question. Thank you for the question. Yes, for this question.
I just have a question for you, and it's actually more about the treatment of environmental issues and climate change issues by presidencies at the moment. As you were saying, we're living in a very unique moment where suddenly the environment and climate change are priority issues in a number of presidencies, including this one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, do you think this is fleeting? Do you think this is just a moment in time? Or do you think that this is here to stay?
And I think it is here to stay. When you read the newspaper, when you read the activities of people, when reading the newspaper yesterday, I was, I think Jakarta we are going to move capitals because of this sea level rise. I think it doesn't ring the bell for some of you. I think it should. So I think we arrived in very critical moments because we already see the consequences of climate change, and especially in international law. I mean, I'm not the international law expert, but in international, you can see that we have to deal with people fleeing their territories because of climate change consequences. So if there's a part of political communication in all this process, and we have to admit it, and we know that an address, the unique address, is not a powerful tool to make change happen. Actually, neither an international convention. I think if we all study a little bit of international law, this law is amazing because of its universalism, but it's also very amazing because it less of effectiveness. And what is effectiveness actually in law in general? So I think there's a part of political communication. There's a part of the trend that all the political leaders serve on. I admit that. But I think if you are someone that is convinced, and I think every student should, this is something that is going to follow us over years now. And this is something that the missions are challenging right now. They are going to be in our policy, role agendas for years ahead. So this is my opinion. Open answer your questions.
Thank you.
Another question. Tom, I don't know who. Right. Yes.
Do you think that there's an opportunity for France and the United States to coordinate going forward in remedial actions just on a country-to-country basis? Or does it have to work within the framework of France within the EU?
This is, I'm not an expert in French, and French and US diplomatic matters, but bilateral cooperation already exists, I think. And we made it clear by Joe Biden, going back into the Paris Agreement. I think this is something that is very meaningful for the bilateral relationship between the US and earlier, the paradox of climate change, the paradox of environmental law, the paradox of political ecology is, yes, we have a lot of interconnected issues to deal with, and I also think that a lot of things that should be dealt with locally. And yeah, basically this is my opinion. I think a lot of national problems, a lot of environmental issues should be solved locally and nationally. And because this is the right area where the law is probably the most effective. And especially if you add to that the fact that in environmental law we have a very specific relationship to public participation. And public participation means that people and citizens should be involved in how environmental law is implemented and environmental law is implemented in general. So I think that, yes, international law, bilateral cooperation, which we're going to use, can be a very helpful tool, but also convince personally that all these answers to these problems should have answers in the law. I don't hope it answers the question.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, do you think that, as it stands currently, presidents, particularly speak on France and the United States, have sufficient power to address climate change issues, and if not, what powers would they benefit from having, and if so, what are the holdups?
Can you repeat the beginning of your answer?
Yeah. Do you think that the president's the power consolidated in the presidential system of the United States and the hybrid system in France, is there enough power there to make the change that's needed?
That's a very good question, and actually, I would say they have enough power, and unfortunately, they have too much power for that. I think, this is my personal opinion, I think that the specificity of the ecological crisis, the environmental crisis, that it's been defined actually in the Nano Ash Council Nano, the specificity of the environmental crisis should make us think about how we should completely reshape institutions, our political institutions, regarding this specific topic of environmental. I think, in my opinion, that Constitution that has been made in 1958 cannot really answer, and neither one of the 18th century cannot really face the answers and the questions that we're facing today in environmental. So I think that, yeah, they have enough power actually. But I think that it is not sufficient because I think the real change should be made by reshaping completely our political institution, for making more involvement of citizens, raising awareness of the citizens on specific topics. So I think it's our presidential system, presidential regimes can face it, but we all know that they're not alone, and they have to face and to deal with economic strategies, economical cooperation with other countries, and so they have the power. Is it enough? I think we do not explore enough all the options that are available.
So it's the wrong kind of power.
For me, I mean, you're talking about the U.S. or France?
I mean, both. Like, are you saying that it's there, the power is there, but it's not in the right places?
I think so. I think so.
What is the attitude of French citizens towards environmental protection? Is it a collection of paper peppers
Or what? So you asked me about the relationship.
the attitude of citizens towards environmental concerns?
Wow, I can't speak for all the citizens of this country, but I think probably for a person of my generation, probably can do that. for a person of my generation, I think we are building a beautiful eco-anxiety, which means that we are very concerned about what kind of planet we're going to live in and what kind of planet we will leave to our children. Because we're mainly concerned, I think a lot of people our generation are concerned about, we are living the consequences of climate change. So, and the generation perspective and perception of the problem is very important because I think someone of the earlier generation do not see the climate change issues the same as someone of my generation. And I think that people younger than me have an even more strong concern about these issues. We saw this with the whole cases led by youth groups, the whole climate justice that is getting stronger and stronger in every country. I think someone on my generation is very concerned.
Do we have time for one more?
Yes, yes.
I just want to ask, kind of building on that, you talk about the role of presidents. What's the role of the judiciary? That's often, particularly what made me think of was talking about the strategic litigation taken by youth groups, and we're seeing that all across the world as well. So.
The role of the judiciary is super important. But I have two opinions on that subject. First thing, it is very important because I think it shows how the judge points the problematics and the problems in our policies. So that is very important in the role of judiciary. But the other opinion that I have is it also stresses on the fact that it is like an endless circle, which means that, okay, we have bad policies. States are condemned by courts to respect their commitments, their international commitments, their national commitments. And we have trials, many trials that say to friends, oh, you should commit with your commitments, international commitments. But this is very limited. I think that it's also very limited because it shows that if the states have to pay billions because he did not respect the convention, the international convention on environmental law, at the end we all know that it's the citizens that pay that. And I think a lot of people know that climate justice is very famous nowadays in environmental law. It's like this is kind of a trend. I believe it's a trend because I think the problem that we're facing right now cannot be solved in courts, only in suing state. It's a tool, it has to be used, and it's good that we do, but it's not like a miracle solution. I think a lot of people are very happy of some more changes that occur in environmental law on that specific topic, and also when it comes to recognizing some rights to the nature. I don't believe it is a miracle solution. And probably that solution do not come only with law, but also with some more political involvement. So, here we go again, go back. So, yes,
I think this is a good moment to end, and I wanted to thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your scholarship, all of the wonderful work that you're doing. This is obviously a priority issue at the moment, an issue of a lot of interest, and it's amazing to have scholars like you digging in detail on all these issues.
For this opportunity to have some students and yeah, it's very special thing for all LLM students that are here. I have made some connections with some French students in the LLM program. There's a lot of 10, but yeah, thank